We've made it to the end of our series focusing on the book of Revelation. It remains a weird book, a text that is no less strange than when we started, and our skipping over the really extra weird parts in accordance with the lectionary doesn't mean they're not there, and it doesn't make the whole thing any less weird. But by focusing on what this text teaches us about hope and the church and our work as the church, we hope you've experienced the divine in a way that is a little less stuck in our heads and a little more like, ooh, that's like a John Wesley's strangely warmed heart kind of moment. Okay, don't understand it, but I get it. I hope that we've bumped into mystery and glory and the miraculous unknown of what waits for us after death. And I hope that in all this we found a sense of renewal and spaciousness in our faith. I hoped those things before this week, right? Those were our goals as we set out this sermon series. And now I am reminded yet again of how much we need renewal, of how much we need a faith that sits right here and says it doesn't make sense and God is with us anyway. I'm reminded of how very much we need hope. Right, and one, surely we need to quit scheduling that song for when I preach, because it will get me every time. So that aside, our text today offers us this hope that we need so much. Right, this hope, right? It's that like hope is a thing with feathers, and then there's the response, oh no, hope is a sewer rat. It's got teeth and it hangs on when you don't know what else to do. And whatever our metaphor for hope is, our hope is in Jesus, who was and is and shall remain, right? Our hope is not just this like far off heaven and someday we'll get there. Our hope is that we will get through. When the world doesn't make any sense, that is when we lean on each other and we get through. Our hope calls us as we sit and we wonder and we rage to not just lean on each other, but to open those arms and to say, it's okay. Come on in. We've got you. And to keep doing that work, not just because we need someone to lean on, but because we know there is hope beyond the moment. And that it is a hope that will carry us through the worst and into the continued work of inviting people to know and live with a God who loves us. I started playing the piano when I was 4. Once I learned how to read music, and I was regularly telling my dad that he was doing it wrong and not playing what was on the page. I was handed off, shall we say, to a professional teacher. From the time I was 6 or so until I was 17 or so, I practiced hours a day with the goal of being a concert pianist. Eventually, I had a judge who was brutally honest and was like, hon, you're good, but with those hands, it's never gonna happen. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll be a music therapist instead. Like, that's a consolation prize, right? That didn't happen either. But music remained and remains not only a thing that makes me cry all the time, but an expressive part of my life. When I turn to in these moments where I need to encounter God's hope and don't know what to do with words. The first time I bumped into death unexpectedly, I was 13. I got to school thinking that the worst part of the day was going to be a geography test, and learned that a friend I volunteered with had been killed, along with his sister and a friend in a drug deal turned robbery. I had no idea how to deal with this, right? I'm 13. I'm expecting a geography test, and then the world flips over. I remember spending the day feeling like my feet couldn't find the ground, getting home, getting to the piano, and just having this sense of like, oh, I know how to be here. I know what it means to be here. I remember my favorite version of Bach's Joy just pouring out of my hands. It was all I had and all I could say. That movement from lightness and play into shadow and sorrow, back into this stubborn insistence that joy will come again, was a balm. And I have felt so much of that this week. As we wrap up this text that is full of stubborn joy and really inexplicable esoteric stuff, we've been marked by an exceptionally violent 3 weeks. We've watched Ukrainian cities fall to Russian armed forces. We've watched underwater volcanoes erupt and propel hyper-evolved sharks into the waters, leaving scientists to go, okay, I don't know what to do with this, but now we know, and we will figure out what this means. We've witnessed shootings motivated by racial hatred in Buffalo, New York, and Santa Ana, California. Multiple person shootings in Chicago, and then the elementary school shooting in Texas. And when we started this series, I genuinely worried that having a pandemic was too end of the world-y, and maybe too on the nose, and it was just gonna be too much, and here we are. Right? Reminded again that white racism and human hatred can always find one more thing to do. And then there's this text, right? The martyrs, those who have been through tribulation, cry out. And I'm like, oh, this is not the first time. And God is with them, and God is with us. We watch families cry out. We cry out. And God remains. And yet, I don't know about y'all, but sometimes my cry is a whole lot like so about that hope. Where is this hope? Where is the promise? Where, quite frankly, are you, oh God? The book of Revelation testifies that our hope is where it has always been. That God is where God has always been. That our hope is in Jesus, the crucified and risen Lamb who reigns forever. And that God is on the throne and with us at the same time. And after 6 weeks, and after years and decades, right, that whole God is in all the places all at once doesn't make any more sense up here than it did when I started studying this. But there is one thing that is clear, not just from digging into the text, but from living and looking for God in this time and space, and that is God does not, and has not, and will not leave us. That God has not forsaken us and doesn't plan on starting now. That God's call to us, in some ways, has always boiled down to, I've got you. And that we might not like how it looks. We might really actively disagree with how this looks. And Jesus is still our hope, and God is still on the throne and with us in all things. And that doesn't end there, right? That our call remains the same, that this diverse and equal and just worshiping community that we long to join is something we bring about on earth too, that we don't just hang out and wait and sit and rage and yell and cry, but that we do the work of getting to know our neighbors, of opening our arms in the circle, and of saying, I know this is really hard, and we've got each other, and God's got us, and we've got you. And then the easy part is, right, not lose hope. Just keep going, just keep doing it, and remember God's got this and we don't need to lose hope. I've become a wordsmith rather than a musician, and yet words fail me. I am a mother of young children, married to a teacher, friend to teachers and administrators, friend to a pastor who will bury some of those sweet babies in Texas this week. And words just plain fail me right now. And yet God doesn't fail us. And this is a community where I think we know that this gift of music doesn't fail us. And hope doesn't fail us. It just sounds and looks a little different sometimes. And so instead of continuing to talk and pretending I have anything to say, I'm taking you the risk of offering you the same journey of joy and grief and hope that poured out of me decades ago. I pray that through all the mistakes I am sure I will make, and the arthritis that makes this hard in the first place, we will find a way to meet God. And that deep need for hope that sticks will show up where words might not.
Amen.